you starting to kind of zero in on your rotations and
Yeah.
kind of who will play and who will, maybe not be playing as much?
The depth is, the depth obviously makes you feel comfortable, as a defensive staff when you're planning, because you got guys that, hey, something happens, right, we can move this guy around. Starting to really get honing into those personnel packages, who do we want to get on the field at the right time? And when you have some of these young skill players like we have that are talented guys, it's our job to make sure we find creative ways to get them on the field as opposed to just our base package. And that's kind of what this time of year is meant for.
There's been a lot of talk about this offense being pretty prolific. How has that helped having that type of a strong offense to go against day in, day out?
Well, so first off, right, there's two parts of that. One is the personnel, right, and then the other part is the scheme, right? So Kalen, what he does schematically has been phenomenal for us. Obviously, what it's going to be in the season, right, because we don't have to deal with it, other people do. But for us to be able to see all those different looks and the multiplicity of what he's doing and the creative ways he gets to those things is it's been phenomenal for us. It's changed us as a defense. Then the skill level of our wide receivers, our running backs, tight ends, I think are probably the most improved position on the team, in my opinion, just looking from an outside in. And then obviously the dynamic quarterbacks, and their arm talents. So for us, that part has been really good, but cannot overlook the scheme and what that's done for us defensively.
I think you felt pretty good so far in camp about your unit, but after having your dad here and having that outside perspective, kind of unbiased opinion, did he kind of confirm some of the positive thoughts you guys have had?
Certainly confirmed, some of the things that I think we already know. Just the improvement of some of these young players that, he got to watch 7 games last year, so getting to see them now, their footwork is so much cleaner, their anticipation of things, they're playing fast. Obviously, what Dave Blue and Matt Ray have done in the weight room, it just translates to a football field, and you start looking back, game planning, right, and you look back from where some of those young guys were that were playing out there on the field against Ball State, and you forget how far they've really come. They've improved, right, but then when you actually take a step back and you go, wow, it's pretty exciting.
As a longtime defensive coordinator, targeting, your thoughts on how it's been called and how do you guys kind of coach it, to avoid those kind of penalties?
You're talking about from my dad's perspective, long-time
Or from
defense
your perspective, rather, yeah.
and how I call it?
Yeah, and your thoughts on it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I just think ultimately it's funny, the same system, right, is what we've ran at different places, okay? So Tom and I both branched out from my dad at Ole Miss, but my dad had a certain way of calling it. Tom had a certain way of calling it at South Florida because of the way he called the system and then the personnel. That changed at Indiana, myself, Eastern Illinois to South Alabama to Indiana. We all kind of call it a little bit differently, but we call some of the same plays, you know what I'm saying, or really all the same plays. So for me, I'm more of a pictures guy, you know what I mean? I see the picture, I make the call. I'm an on-field signaler, so that changes a little bit of stuff in terms of how we do those things. But, for us, we just, we kind of adapted with the things that we needed to change in the springtime, and then we got good at it in the summer, and then just kept on moving from there.
Marcelino, you talked about Coach Ballou and some of the explosion you get from just different players. Marcelino, how close is he to his ceiling, do you feel like, or how much more is there for him to get of his potential?
Pretty impressive. Just again, when you start talking about some of those ways that you got to be able to utilize Lino, I think that's some of the things that we're exploring and getting into, just utilizing his full skill set, just because he is so powerful, he is so fast, so just to him, finding those multiple roles, right, where he's going to be placed on the field based off the situation is going to be really important, and he's kind of taken ownership of that. He's matured a great deal. He's a passionate energy player, and sometimes those passionate energy players have to be reined in to some degree, and I think he is learning those things and has much improved from where he was before.
How do you rein him in, I guess? Just remind him,
Accountability every single day, right? So, and that doesn't change. The way we hold you accountable doesn't have to be emotional, doesn't mean we love you any less, but we set the standard. When you meet the standard and expectations, we're going to love you up and pat you on the back and tell you why you did it right. Mm-hmm. When you don't, there's consequences, and then we move on.
How's the defensive line depth developing, and you're finding some roles for guys?
Significant improvement there. Probably on our side of the ball, that's probably the most improved unit from where we were a year ago. And I think that's saying a lot because of some of that young back-end talent. So just, Those guys are really, they're working hard. Some guys that we just, you kind of identify, okay, Jerome Johnson, right? Jerome Johnson's a good football player. But then you identify about 4 or 5 guys that you're like, we really need them to come on. And if they do, we'll probably be in good shape. If they don't, right, well, it's going to be, Jerome, you're going to be playing a bunch, you know what I'm saying? So for us, having that has been really critical when most of those guys have kind of taken their game, probably exceeded our expectations.
Who are some of those 4 or 5 guys that you're seeing?
I'd say Lance Bryan is the first one to step out to me. He's playing at a very high level right now. He has become a guy from just somebody that executes, all right, to now he's become a true playmaker for us. Obviously, DeMarcus Elliott coming in and owning that role in such a short amount of time has been really important for us. Trey Maurice, Shamar Jones, and then some of those young guys are really doing some good things.
With the line being probably your least experienced area on that side of the ball, is there an advantage to having more guys coming in to giving that opposing offensive line different looks constantly?
Yeah, I think part of those different looks are just are what we do schematically based off of what package is on the field. You know what I mean? But from that standpoint, I do think when you have some savvy speed guys versus some big pluggers in there, that can sometimes that's a difference for us.
Speaking of Marcelino, last year him and Cam were in the same position, Cam Jones, so you really couldn't get them on the field a lot together. This year, obviously different positions. Without getting anything away, how creative can you be when you have 2 guys who are such great athletes, can rush the passer, off the edge, blitz for you, drop into coverage, play the run? How much fun is it to kind of design stuff with those 2 on the field?
Pretty fun, I think it's, and I've told you guys this before, I think it's my job as the coordinator and as a defensive staff to take dynamic athletes and find creative ways to get them in one-on-one matchups. And I think that's kind of what our area of focus is right now.
You talked about how freshmen, from freshman year to sophomore year, and you see the advances from the spring and coming into the fall. Devin Matthews was a guy who played last year a little bit, and Brian Fitzgerald getting experience. How much do you feel like they've come along from where they were?
Guys like Bryant, I'm sorry, who else did you say?
Devin Matthews.
Yeah, so Devon's, him and Fitzy are just, they had the talent, from day one. They're just, safety is such a field position sometimes, it's such an instinctive position where you say, look, here are the rules, right? You work within the rules, but ultimately get a joker down, and make a play when you're back there. And for those 2 guys, experience is the only way to accomplish that goal. And as they start to gain more and more experience, you see them start to anticipate. And that's the difference in a 5 or 6 yard gain on an out route, right, versus them getting a PBU or a pick. And we're starting to make those plays.
How much does Khalil Bryant's experience and maturity, help you in those aspects?
So Khalil, right, he's like the godfather in that room right now, because if you think about it, everybody else is a redshirt sophomore or freshman or whatever. He's the one that they kind of all look to. Khalil's not the most talented guy in that room, certainly, but he is one of the most productive because he knows where to put his eyes. He's seen so much, and he just makes plays. And Khalil's probably one of the most sure tacklers in our defense.
How about the guy coaching that room? How much of a pain in the butt is he?
Say that
The
again?
guy coaching that safety room.
Yeah, total. Difficult to deal with every day. We just try to work around him as best we can.